So hello, love. So I'm going to tell you a story today, and it's one of the stories that's in my book, Twice the Afterlife. And I've been telling you about that for, I don't know, a couple weeks now. It's going to be launched on the 20th of this month, not too far away. But one of the stories in this book is one of my favorite stories, and I tell a lot of animal stories in this book because not only is this book about my near-death experiences, but it's what helped to create an even greater awareness of my life here on Earth. And part of that is being connected with the animal family, with my animal family. And one of those stories is about Miles. So Miles came into my life when I was married before, and my former husband would take our two dogs down to the river. We lived near the Platte River, and he would take them down to run in a field there. And one time it was midwinter, and he came across this beautiful black dog that had been injured, and it was down there, and a lot of people had tried to take care of it. And it was a smooth chow, which is bigger than a chow chow. It's pure black, and he has the black tongue. And he's just absolutely gorgeous. He looks like a big black Akita with the big mane. He was just a gorgeous dog. So we went down to visit him, and he wouldn't let you come near, but he would play with the dogs. And so I went along one time, and I sat down on the edge of the river, and he came up to me, and I was so privileged to get his attention. And I lost my fingers in his mane because his mane was so thick that my hands got completely lost in his mane. And I loved this dog. People had left him lots of food. They left him a blanket to lay on, and there were signs all over the place for whoever's dog this was to come and find their dog because they couldn't catch him. They couldn't get a hold of him. So about a week later, I should say that for several days after that, when I would go to work and I come on my way home from work, I would stop by the park where he was, by the river where he was, and I would feed him food and I would give him lots of love. And then about a week later, my husband came home from taking the dogs for a walk, and he says, "Someone's here to meet you." And the dog had followed them home on three legs because he had injured his back left leg and he couldn't walk on it. It's like his hip was dislocated and it was really cut up and scratched up real badly. And so he was walking on three legs, but he followed them home. And we wanted to keep him, but he was terribly thin. And we couldn't, we had already had two dogs. We had two cats at the time. And so what we did is we took him to a no-kill shelter where they brought him back to health. They treated him for Giardia, and they brought him back to health. And one of the vet techs there named him Miles because his favorite musician was Miles Davis. And so Miles was there for about 6 months, and I decided I was going to adopt him. I went to visit him. I actually joined there as a volunteer so I could take him for walks, and I just loved this dog. And the vet who owned it said, "Just take the dog home. It's obvious that he loves you, and there's a connection between you." And he knew the story about how we found him. But I went ahead and adopted him, and I brought him home. And there's more stories there, but I want to tell you about the story about when Digit, who was our third cat, came into our life. And it was summertime, and the foxes would come by our house every night about 9 o'clock and then again at midnight. And we always knew that because the dogs, if they were out in the yard, they would bark and and it would be pandemonium for just a short while, and the fox would just kind of tease our dogs because we had like a chain link fence and they could see through the fence, and and the neighbors complained every time the dogs barked, so I'd always have to bring them in before 9 o'clock and bring them in and make sure that I brought them in again at midnight in case we put them back out again after the fox had left that particular time. But it was late in the evening, and I fed the cats, and I would always put their food in a bowl, and I'd click it with a spoon and go ding, 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 and the cats would come in running. So two of the cats came running for food, but Digit didn't. Now, Digit was she was a polydactyl cat. She had extra toes, so that's why we called her Digit. And there's stories about her in the book as well. But she was real tiny. She's about 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds at the most, and just had kind of a personality of like a black panther. She was ferocious. She was really funny, but she didn't come for food, and I thought we had just had some furniture delivered, and I thought she probably got out of the house during that time. So it was around 10:30. The dogs were outside in the yard, and I went out, and the screen door slammed, and all the dogs came running from the back of the backyard out to the front. And I would talk to the dogs. We had a real special relationship. They were very protective of me, and always, there's stories about that in the book as well. But they were very protective, and they were all three alpha males. They got along wonderfully well. One was a Australian Shepherd wolf dog. He was just beautiful, and one was a Rottweiler mix. And then there was Miles, the smooth chow, pure black, beautiful dog. So they came running out, and they heard the door slam, and they came running out. And I said to him, I said, I think Digit got out. And I'd been looking out with my flashlight under the cars and seeing if she was hiding under there. And we didn't want her to be out there by the time that the fox came out again, because foxes and cats don't mix very well. So I went ahead and said to them, I said, do you happen to know where Digit is? And Miles came running up the steps. It was like 5 steps to the top of the porch. And he just stopped there, and he looked up at me, and he ran back down to the bottom of the porch, and he came back up again and looked up at me and ran back down. And I thought, is he trying to get me to follow him? So I did. I went down the stairs, I took my flashlight, and he started walking around the house. And we went from the porch around the first corner, and he'd go about 10 feet, and then 10 steps or so, and he'd turn around and make sure that I was watching him. I'm like, I'm right behind you. And then he'd go 10 more steps and do the same thing. He'd stop and look behind me and make sure I was right behind him. We went all the way around the house to the back of the house where there was a shed. And he went to the door of the shed and looked in and looked up at me, looked in, looked up at me, and I'm still like, I can't believe he's guiding me here. And so I went into the shed, took my flashlight in and around the pots and the tools and the bags of soil and everything. And there on the back bench, I saw these 2 little gold eyes peeking at me. And Digit had been at the back of the fence. And probably what happened is the dogs chased her back there. But the thing is they knew what I was asking. So I picked her up. She was real little. And I brought her to the door because Miles was still standing at the door of the shed looking up at me. And I said, Digit, make sure you tell Miles thank you because he saved your life. And she just looked at him and did what Digit does. And she goes, so she just hissed at him. So I took her inside and I fed her, made sure she was fine. And I came back outside and poured all kinds of love over my beautiful, charismatic dog because he was just, he was just amazing. All 3 of my dogs were amazing. All 3 of my cats were as well. But there's stories in the book about that and how they came about in our lives and how they were always there for me and how they got along. And there are other stories about Miles where he got lost one time and the neighbor helped me find him, which was a pretty miraculous story in itself. But animals are just so connected. They know the world in ways that we have no clue. And if we tap into who they are, our lives are just amplified in a much greater way. So if you don't have an animal, pay attention to when you're going out there in, kind of in the fields and the flowers and maybe in the mountains, or if you're out there in the forest and see if you can see the deer and see the elk and, pay attention to the wild animals around you because they have things to teach you. They have things to share with you. I went to see my brother yesterday, who's in an assisted living home, and he's close to the end of his life. And I was reading to him, and outside there were birds, all kinds of birds that were coming to feed on the bird feeder, and there was a great big rabbit, and then there was a deer that walked by up above. And so life is everywhere. So I was telling him about what I was seeing out there because he loved animals too. But again, I invite you to pre-order my book. Again, it's called Twice the Afterlife, The Miracle and Magic of Living Heaven on Earth. And it's stories about my 2 near-death experiences. That's why it's called Twice the Afterlife. But it's also about all kinds of experiences that I've had, some which I almost didn't make it. I came real close to not making it, but there was some kind of mystery and magic that kind of brought me back to living my life in a good way. And so I have stories throughout the book. I had many, many stories I wrote that I didn't put in the book, and I'll tell you about those stories too as time goes on. But I just want to convey to you the importance of who you are and how your stories matter, and how as we share our stories with people, and not just our, oh, woe is me stories, because we all have them, but share the stories that are miraculous, the stories that are wonderful, the things that, just little small things that happen that are just really quite astounding. And just kind of tune into those things. Remember those things. Help them ignite something in you that's the greatness of your life, and it helps to bring each day a little bit more joy, a little bit more happiness, a little bit more wonder. So you keep on looking for those good things in your life that happen. So I'm going to put the link here if you want to pre-order my book. You can. And I'd love that. It would help me out a lot. But I think more than anything, you're going to enjoy the book because it's all done in story. It's all storytelling throughout the entire book. And I think it's a good one. But I'd love to hear from you if you've read it. I'd love to know your own experiences, if you've had some of your own mystical or magical experiences in life with other people or with other animals, with nature itself. You know, leave me messages. Let me know what you think. And I'll put my website up here as well. So I send you lots of love, and I hope that you're having a great weekend. And may this week be one of the most wonderful weeks you've ever had. How about if we do that? Sending y'all lots of love. Bye for now.